McCarthy missing 218 speaker votes? House Republicans preparing for Doomsday Scenario. Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the Republican caucus in the House, has made it clear that he has no intention of withdrawing from the race for the position of Speaker of the House despite the fact that a right-wing faction is threatening to derail his speakership ambitions. He has made this promise by saying, "I'll never leave." McCarthy assured CNN that he will receive the necessary number of votes to become Speaker of the House, which is 218. Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona, a right extremist who is fighting Rep. Kevin McCarthy to be the most powerful member of Congress, has reaffirmed his determination to thwart the rise of the Republican from California. Biggs is running against McCarthy for the position. When asked by CNN on Thursday if he would withdraw from the race, Biggs responded, "I'm not bluffing." McCarthy's supporters and opponents, alike, are beginning to stealthily game out the next steps if he is unable to get the necessary 218 votes on the first round and they move into uncharted territory in light of the growing likelihood that the race for Speaker could go to multiple ballots, which is something that hasn't happened since 1923. This is despite the fact that this is something that hasn't happened since 1923. McCarthy's supporters have stated that they will continue to vote for him on multiple ballots, and sources within the GOP have stated that there have been preliminary discussions about a floor strategy for this potential scenario. One of the options being considered is whether to recess the House or allow the votes to continue rolling for an indefinite amount of time. McCarthy and his team have been having serious conversations with a group of conservatives in an effort to prevent this from occurring. The topics of these conversations have included the possibility of giving the conservatives influential committee assignments and more power to drive the legislative process. According to sources within the Republican Party, those conversations are still in the early stages of the process and could wind up providing the group some portion of what the hardliners are badly seeking: more power to pursue the expulsion of a sitting speaker with a vote on the floor. Biggs refused to answer when asked if he would withdraw from the race if he did not receive 218 votes on the first ballot of the election. "I'm not going to talk about hypotheticals," said Biggs, who failed to win the nomination to become the Speaker of his conference despite receiving 31 votes the previous month. "I'm not going to talk about hypotheticals." However, in the event of a worst-case scenario, in which neither McCarthy nor Biggs are able to receive 218 votes on January 3rd and neither candidate withdraws from the race, some Republicans who support McCarthy have signaled their support for an alternative strategy. It is a long shot, but some Republicans have stated that they would be willing to collaborate with Democrats to identify a moderate Republican candidate who has a chance of receiving the 218 votes necessary to win the gavel. This idea highlights the level of uncertainty that is currently surrounding the race for Speaker of the House. Our preliminary strategy calls for casting our ballots for Kevin and allowing him to continue to square off against this opponent. Representative Don Bacon, a Republican from Nebraska, made this statement, "But if they think they're going to use this to infinity to push him out of office, well, we're not going to bend to their will." Bacon added that if conservatives in the Republican Party would not back down, he would be happy to collaborate with Democrats to identify another moderate Republican candidate who could win the necessary 218 votes to become Speaker. "If a tiny group refuses to play ball and be a member of the team, then we will work across the aisle to find a Republican who is willing to compromise," added Bacon. "But it's my sincere wish that we won't arrive there." McCarthy's critics don't buy this line of reasoning. Representative Matt Gaetz, a Republican from Florida, said that he is a hard no on McCarthy because there are very significant rules and changes that are being discussed that would open up the House, that would be transformative, and that would give us the ability to actually legislate and represent our constituents. "There are very significant rules, changes being discussed that would open the House up, that would transformative," Gaetz said. "And whoever the Speaker is going to have to be, I think, is going to have to agree to those guidelines. And I don't think it'll be Kevin McCarthy because I don't think he'll get 218 votes." Additionally, Gaetz stated, "I think the person who is eventually going to be the Speaker isn't even the contender yet." In point of fact, a small group of Republicans known as the Never Kevin movement, certain that Biggs could not win a majority of seats in the House, has been trying to recruit a viable alternative, and they claim several Republicans have privately told them they would be interested in running if McCarthy drops out of the race. This movement is confident that Biggs could not win a majority of seats in the House. Their objective is to demonstrate that McCarthy is vulnerable on the first vote by voting for Biggs, and they believe that this will encourage further candidates to enter the race. Representative Bob Good, a Republican from Virginia who is a hard no on McCarthy's nomination, told CNN that the strength of the anti-McCarthy group will be shown by the number of members who voted for someone other than McCarthy. I believe that there will be a greater number of candidates on the second ballot. There have already been Republicans who have expressed interest in being considered for the role. Even Republicans in the House who are backing McCarthy have predicted that a number of other lawmakers will run in his place if he drops out of the race. Some of these Republicans believe that House Minority Whip Steve Scalise, who is currently McCarthy's top deputy, will emerge as the front-runner in such a scenario. If Kevin decided to take his name off the list at some point in time, then you would have nice people running. Scalise has consistently promised to support McCarthy and refused to speculate on whether he would step into the race if the GOP leader can't get the numbers. One Republican congressman stated that Scalise would probably be the guy to run for the seat if McCarthy can't get the votes. Scalise responded to CNN's inquiry by saying, "No, I'm not going to get into speculation. It should come as no surprise that we are concentrating our efforts on finding a solution before January 3rd. And I'm sure that you, Kevin, have been having a lot of conversations with the members of the group who have voiced their concerns." Representative Jim Jordan, a conservative who is slated to become the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, went even further by stating that he would not enter the race for the speakership, despite the fact that Gaetz and other hardliners have encouraged him to run for the position. Jordan is set to become the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. When asked if he would run for office if McCarthy was unable to get the votes, Jordan responded with a no. "I am interested in serving as chair of the Judiciary Committee." More concessions are being considered by McCarthy's. McCarthy has 222 GOP seats to defend the following year, which means that he can only afford to lose 4 Republican votes and still win the speakership. However, he and his team are still keeping their fingers crossed that he will win in the first round, despite the fact that he has been making efforts, in public and in private, to win over holdouts. At this point, at least 5 Republicans have stated their intention to vote against him on the floor. However, in a promising sign for McCarthy, one of them has demonstrated that he can be convinced otherwise. After exiting a meeting in McCarthy's office on Wednesday, Republican Representative Ralph Norman of South Carolina said, "I will vote for Andy for Speaker, subject to what we are discussing." Norman is from South Carolina. McCarthy is from California. Later, he elaborated, saying, "Everything is looking up. Regardless of what happens, positive transformation is occurring in our midst. And you'll be exposed to it more often." In addition to those 5, a new group of 7 Republican hardliners presented a list of conditions to earn their vote on Thursday. However, they did not specifically threaten to vote against McCarthy if their demands are not met, and they did not indicate that they would vote against McCarthy if their demands were not met. Their list of demands includes a promise that leaders won't play in primaries, restoring the motion to vacate the Speaker's chair, placing more conservatives on key committees, giving members at least 72 hours to read bill text before a vote, and committing to using the debt ceiling as a bargaining chip to demand more spending cuts, according to a copy of the letter that CNN obtained. This demonstrates the work that McCarthy needs to do in order to get to 218. McCarthy has already begun brokering some rules changes to empower rank-and-file members, created a new select committee on China, vowed to boot some Democratic lawmakers from their committees, and sketched out in greater detail his investigative plans. These plans include a potential impeachment investigation into Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. McCarthy also created a new select committee on China. But McCarthy still has other levers at his disposal that he can pull. House hardliners on the right are lobbying for more membership on the influential House Rules Committee, which is allied with the leadership of the House and determines how and when measures are brought to the floor for debate. According to one source familiar with the situation, McCarthy was encouraged in a private meeting with a member of the House Freedom Caucus to take a more forceful public stance on the upcoming policy concerns for the following year. And the anti-McCarthy group is still pushing for a process that would allow any single member to hold a floor vote on ousting the existing speaker. This is a tactic that was used against previous Speaker John Boehner before the far right forced him out of his post in 2015. McCarthy has been fiercely opposed to the idea of restoring the move to vacate the chair, and during a meeting held behind closed doors a month ago, the majority of members of the House Republican caucus voted against the proposition. McCarthy chuckled and declined to comment when CNN questioned him on Thursday about whether or not he would revisit the subject. But McCarthy's opponents have stated that it is an issue that is very much still on the table, and they believe that he may wind up having to accept it if he still does not have the votes for Speaker by January 3rd. CNN was told by sources within the Republican Party that there is potential room for negotiation to give members more power to call for a vote to oust the Speaker. This could be accomplished, for example, by allowing the vote to take place only if a certain number of members call for it, as opposed to the hardliners' desire to allow a single lawmaker to call for a vote. Good stated that a capable and secure leader would not feel threatened by the motion to quit their position. And so, yeah, that I think it's fundamental to many people, the speaker continued. And so, yeah, that. Others, however, have stated that what Good and his friends are pursuing is a recipe for disaster, and they have demanded that their co-workers adhere to the established order. Representative David Joyce, a Republican from Ohio, was asked about the impact of a floor fight on January 3rd and said, "I think that's one of the reasons that we didn't see a red wave. The idea that people are sick and tired of the noise, and they're sick and tired of the fighting." Joyce was referring to the lack of a red wave. And I know that when I travel in my district, that is the question that gets asked of me, and that is, why can't you guys just get things done? McCarthy, in the midst of his frantic efforts to secure votes for Speaker, also postponed the Republican Party's internal elections for committee chairmanships. McCarthy's math problem would be much more difficult if one of the members fighting for a gavel, Representative Vern Buchanan of Florida, decided to retire earlier than planned in the event that he did not win the gavel. Buchanan, on the other hand, vigorously refuted the premise. He stated to the media, "It's ludicrous, it's stupid. I'm doing all in my power to assist Kevin in achieving his goal of 218. McCarthy might also try to persuade Democrats or his opponents within the Republican Party to vote present or not show up to the proceedings on the floor, which would reduce the threshold he needs to clear in order to become Speaker. But McCarthy assured his fellow Republicans that he would not make any efforts to solicit Democratic support. Would it be possible for Republicans and Democrats to agree on a Speaker? McCarthy has been telling his detractors over the past few weeks that if they don't unite, then Democrats could hypothetically join together and peel off a few Republicans in order to elect the next Speaker. This has been a part of McCarthy's appeal to his opponents. Representative Henry Cuellar, a moderate Democrat from Texas, told CNN that several of his Republican colleagues had approached him informally about the proposal. Cuellar is one of the Democrats who has stated that they would be willing to consider the possibility. Joyce also mentioned that other members had approached him about the possibility of running for office, but he had declined their offers. When it's all said and done, Kevin is going to take over as the next Speaker. Representative Hakeem Jeffries of New York, who is slated to become the next leader of the House Democrats, stated that there are no behind-the-scenes conversations that he has had with Republicans regarding the nomination of an alternate candidate. However, he did not rule out the possibility that his caucus might participate in the election of the next Speaker if McCarthy was unable to secure the necessary number of votes. Jeffries stated to CNN on Thursday that the Democratic Party is currently in the process of assembling the Democratic Conference. The Republican Conference is now undergoing the process of being organized by Republicans. Let's see what kind of day January 3rd is going to be. Representatives Fred Upton of Michigan and John Katko of New York, who are both retiring and voted to impeach Donald Trump for inciting the Capitol insurrection, have been mentioned as potential consensus picks. Other names that have been mentioned include Rep. Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, who is a co-chair of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus, and Rep. Tom Cole of Oklahoma, who is an experienced lawmaker and will take over as the incoming head of the House Rules Committee. However, in order for that to happen, each and every Democrat and the support of 5 Republicans are required, which is not an easy task. Upton told CNN that he does not intend to be in Washington on that day, saying instead that he planned to go skiing instead. And progressives, like as New York Representative Jamal Bowman, have stated that they will never vote for a Republican candidate for Speaker of the House, regardless of how moderate the nominee may be. Bowman responded with a no, indicating that he would vote for Jeffries on each and every ballot on January 3rd. Hakeem is going to end up being the one. Representative Bruce Westerman, a Republican, said that something similar has occurred in the past, specifically in Arkansas, where a small group of Democrats in the minority in the state legislature joined forces with a few Republicans to elect a Republican Speaker of the House of their choosing. This occurred almost 10 years ago. This week, Westerman presented his argument to his co-workers in a session that was conducted behind closed doors. "I'm concerned about January 3rd getting here and us not being able to create a Congress and assemble committees and getting delayed in pushing the policy objectives that we want to push," Westerman said. "I'm concerned about getting delayed in pushing the policy objectives that we want to push." Westerman went on to say that the conversation regarding modifying the rules of the House is beneficial for the party. However, he continued by saying, "I'm not really enthused about any kind of disruptive movement."